Hi guys, Andrew here with Headphones.com. Today we're going to talk about the Beyerdynamic TYGR 300R gaming headphone, which is an over-ear open-back dynamic driver headphone that comes in right at around $200 normally, but we actually bought it on sale with this microphone as a bundle. And also for this review, I'm going to be using the Fox microphone. That's the one that comes with the bundle for the duration of the review. This is going to be mostly a review of the headphone, or entirely a review of the headphone, but if you're curious to get a sense of what the microphone sounds like, this is what the microphone sounds like without any additional audio processing being applied. Now, right now is where I would normally put the intro to the video, but I'm currently working on a new intro. I'm not sure when that's going to be done, and I'm just tired of the old one. So let's just launch into the review. So let's begin with the build quality, design, and comfort. The build on this is, it's made of plastic, but with that said, it doesn't feel like rickety plastic. It certainly feels a little more sturdy than what you get with the AKG K371 here. I would describe this as a little bit more on the rickety side, whereas the TYGR 300R feels a little bit more like sturdy plastic. Now, unfortunately, you do not have a removable cable. This cable is fixed into here. It's terminated in 3.5mm, but I've just thrown a 1/4" adapter on there. It's your standard no-nonsense cable. I just wish it were removable. As far as the comfort is concerned, let me just extend the arms here. One nice thing about this headphone is that you do get your left and right indicators on the inside right here. So let me just put this on and show you what it looks like when I wear it. Obviously I'm wearing a hat. I don't wear a hat when I'm evaluating headphones. It's just because I didn't feel like combing my hair this morning. I need a haircut badly. But anyways, so the comfort on this one, I really like this headphone for comfort. It's one of the more comfortable headphones I've had the pleasure of wearing for a long period of time. And I think that fits because this is again meant to be a gaming headphone. And I don't think anybody's going to have any issues wearing this, over the course of their practice sessions for, competitive gaming and stuff like that. And importantly, this is a big departure from some of their other headphones that are a little bit more studio-oriented, like the DT900 Pro X. The TYGR 300R is the one that is significantly more comfortable with significantly less clamp force. And that to me counts for a lot, especially because I got a big head. So yeah, for big heads, this is thumbs up from me. Now, a couple other things before we get into the sound quality. One is that there's a Velcro top piece here, which you could theoretically remove, but I didn't have any issues with the top comfort part. I think this is more just if you wanted to replace it or something like that, you could do that, which is nice. You can see the headband construction right there, but I had no issues with this top piece. Now the pads here, they're also removable, and then interestingly on the inside here, you see there's a driver covering similar to what you get on the DT900 Pro X. But the driver covering seems to be a little bit different. And so what I'm going to do in the future is I'm actually going to swap out the driver covering with the one that's in the DT900 Pro X. And I'm also going to measure it without any driver covering at all. And if you guys are interested in the results of that, I'm not going to have that as of this recording, but I will post that up on the Headphone Community Forum on the thread that I've created for the TYGR 300R already. And if you're curious about that, I'll leave that linked in the description as well. Now we'll get into the sound quality here, but I just want to mention that this is not a very difficult headphone to drive. You can drive it off of a wide range of equipment, and it's also meant to be plugged into sort of the back of a motherboard. But in my testing, I did run this off of a wide range of equipment, including the Bioelectric HPA V550, the Topping A90, the Schiit Magni 3, the THX AAA1, and a number of other sources, and I had no problem driving this whatsoever. It seemed to do quite well with a wide variety there. As far as any change among them, I didn't really hear much difference, but I think the bigger difference there would be going from, an onboard Realtek controller or something like that, going from that to a dedicated source of some kind would probably make a bigger difference than going from one source to another. Now, let's talk about the sound quality. Let's begin by talking about the frequency response and tonal balance, the objective stuff. And just to be clear here, adherence to a target is not the only thing that counts for sound quality. There's more to it than that. There are places where a headphone's frequency response should deviate from the target, and there are also places where it's okay if it does. I have to say that in every video because it seems like that's unclear. And also importantly, frequency response is not target adherence. There's so much more in frequency response than just adherence to the target or deviation from the target. So we need to evaluate it in more than just those ways, but at the moment, that target is a reference point that helps guide the evaluation. It helps give us a sense of how this sounds in relation to a known reference point there. And this is also where I have to qualify that statement with for music, because really that's what it was based on. That's what that research was based on. It's not based necessarily on gaming performance. Nonetheless, we're going to evaluate this for both. And so for music, taking a look at the frequency response here, you can see that the TYGR 300R is kind of weird. It's definitely on the V-shaped side. I think the biggest issue with this headphone's frequency response is that it does bass poorly for music. Specifically, it has an elevation at the bottom part of the ear gain right at around 200 hertz, and this is going to cause significant bleed from the bass into the mids. Ideally, what you want here is more bass elevation towards the sub bass, the mid bass and sub bass rather than the upper bass. As far as the rest of the frequency response goes, you do get decent clarity for the upper mids, so for where the ear amplifies those frequencies the most strongly, you do get decent presence there. The treble is unfortunately a little bit of a mess because of that 5.5, 5.6K peak, but actually I found that this was not difficult to dial in to how I like it. It was not very difficult because the treble peaks there that you see, they're actually reasonably well balanced out for one another. So all I really had to do was reduce the 5.6K peak and then downshelf the whole thing a little bit, and it got a little bit more in line with my preferences. And then of course I fixed that sort of bass bleed issue. But that's of course the evaluation for music. And for gaming, once again, I think it's worth thinking about this a little bit differently. The mid-range cut, that's around 1K, that's potentially desirable because that, if you look at like the frequency response of the Sennheiser HD100S, which is a very wide and spacious presentation, there's a similarity there. I mean, it's not exactly the same. This is more V-shaped than that, but that mid-range cut, like around 1K, seems to have that effect, at least in conjunction with some of the treble emphasis as well, some of the mid-treble emphasis. And so there's a sense in which I'm actually okay with this kind of tuning for gaming. The other aspect to this is that the treble peaks that you see here in the lower treble, they're actually in an area where in competitive situations, you're going to be wanting to listen for those tones, footsteps and things like that. Now, I think there's still probably a reason to bring that bass back in line a little bit, or like focus it more towards the sub bass, which I do recommend doing or trying out, because the last thing you want is for the upper bass bleed to kind of dominate over those tones that you're needing to pay attention to. So for competitive situations, that's still something worth doing. But I think you also have to consider that there are a lot of people who are buying gaming headphones for the immersion factor, which is where that upper bass boominess can sometimes enhance that quality. So for gaming, this has a frequency response that I think is suitable, even though it might not be as suitable as the competition when it comes to music. But in short, you can think of the TYGR 300R as having a generally V-shaped kind of sound signature that still retains good clarity and presence for the upper mids, which is nice. Now, moving on to the subjective stuff, and I'm going to include gaming performance in here as well, keeping in mind that my esports days are long behind me. I did try this with a number of games, and I was able to perform quite well. This didn't hold me back at all, and of course I was able to top the charts as I usually do because I'm a god among men. No, I'm just kidding. For that, you're going to be wanting Chrono's reviews because he really is good. I still need to get good. Yeah. Let's briefly talk about the soundstage and imaging here. Again, the frequency response elements to this are a major contributing factor, and I do think they have a widening effect to this sound here. And it is one that I do find to be helpful in games. I did find it to be immersive, and I didn't have any issues with image placement. There's some headphones that have gaps in the front left and the front right, and I feel like that they don't really do a good job of the more incremental positional audio stuff. Of course, the flip side to this is that in many cases, you're actually going to be limited more by the game audio itself. So for example, the game audio that you might get in something like Call of Duty is different from the game audio that you might get in CSGO or Valorant or something like that. And so it's worth considering that. And I really do think that you can get used to any type of sound signature as long as there aren't those major gap issues, and even then you can probably still get used to it. But I didn't have any of those problems with this headphone, so I think the image distribution is quite good. And similarly, when evaluating with music, when I was testing with Yoshi Horikawa's Letter, which is a go-to track for that, so you can really hear the incremental panning from left to right or right to left across the front of the stage. So that's good. There's no immediate jumps. So this is a solid performer there. But surprisingly, this headphone is actually more detailed than the DT900 Pro X. Let me just grab that here. I was comparing these back and forth. With the DT900 Pro X, it has this sort of duller, more kind of blunted character to it, with the treble being a little bit more on the smeared side. And on the TYGR 300R, there's no issues there. Now, I'm also led to believe that the driver in the TYGR 300R is different, and it's more reminiscent of that of the DT880 or one of the older Beyers. Again, the front damping here with that sort of cloth material over the driver is also different. So as mentioned, I'll look to get to the bottom of that in the future, but just at the moment, the stock default result here is that the TYGR 300R is a better performing headphone for these qualities than the DT900 Pro X, even though the DT900 Pro X, I mean, yes, it's also boosted in the treble. It's got a much better frequency response for the bass and the mids, some of the very best bass extension I've ever seen in a dynamic driver headphone, for an open back at least. So very impressive, but I still think that the performance overall is just more, it's better on the, the performance is more on the Tiger. Now with that said, it's not that crazy. It doesn't unseat the other, audiophile staple value price to performance headphones in this price bracket. Like the Sennheiser 600 series are a little bit more detailed than these, and they do change a little bit more depending on the source that you're throwing it onto. But as far as the rest of the competition goes, I would put the Tiger 300R as HD 560S adjacent. The HD 560S has a more agreeable frequency response for the bass, the mids, and everything except for 4 to 6K. But it's not like that's particularly good on the Tiger 300R either. So overall, the tonal balance of the HD 560S is certainly better than the Tiger 300R, but I can also see reasons to get the Tiger 300R over the 560S. Like, for example, the build feeling a little bit sturdier, it potentially being a little bit more comfortable, and for anybody looking for that V-shaped kind of sound. Now, if you're wondering about a comparison to the DT880, or at least a 250 ohm version, which is the one that I evaluated, I would say that the performance is fairly similar, just that the Tiger 300R has a little bit more of a tolerable tonal balance in the treble. It's not as bright there, which for me is a little bit easier to deal with. And of course, the DT880 doesn't have that crazy upper bass bump that the Tiger has. So in conclusion, do I recommend the Tiger 300R? Certainly I do for gaming. I think that this is a solid choice there. For music, I think that's when other considerations come into play. Is it worth it going for the 560S that has a little bit more of an even tonal balance there in the bass and in the mids? Or maybe even going up to the HD6XX if you're planning on getting into amplifiers and things like that, because that does require an amplifier while the Tiger 300R doesn't. And a lot of people who just don't get into that stuff. So if that sounds like you, I definitely recommend this headphone. And for me, this is also just interesting to investigate because, as mentioned, even after kind of balancing out the EQ there, which, by the way, if you're curious about my EQ settings for this, I have left that in a link in the description there as well, and you can try it out for yourself and see if that works. But yeah, this is just interesting to me because, even after doing that, I found the Tiger 300R to be more detailed, so it's worth looking into the acoustic design here and figuring out exactly why that's the case. Nonetheless, that does it for this video. Thanks for taking the time to watch it, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.